Picture this. Charleston, South Carolina in 1862.
Hmm.
The Civil War is raging all around you.
Right.
And the harbor is just a maze of Confederate warships
Yeah.
and forts.
Heavily patrolled.
Heavily patrolled.
Yes.
Now, imagine for a second you're enslaved in this very city.
Okay.
But you know that freedom exists just beyond those heavily guarded waters.
Mm-hmm.
What would you risk for a chance at liberty?
Well, that's exactly the question that Robert Smalls, a
Yeah.
23-year-old enslaved man working on the Confederate steamship Planter,
Uh-huh.
had to confront.
Yeah.
And his answer was incredibly audacious.
Robert Smalls.
Yes.
He wasn't just any enslaved person, was he?
No, he wasn't.
Fact.
He was a skilled wheelsman,
Mhm.
which means he knew the ship inside and out.
Right.
And his escape wasn't just some impulsive act.
Okay.
It was meticulously planned.
I can only imagine the risks involved in something like that.
Oh, absolutely.
What kind of planning goes into something like this?
Well, the level of detail is astonishing. He had to learn the intricate whistle codes
Mm-hmm.
used to signal safe passage past Confederate forts,
Wow.
figure out how to impersonate the captain,
Yeah.
and coordinate with other enslaved people
Right.
who were also seeking freedom.
All while under the constant threat of being discovered.
Exactly. All of that.
It sounds almost impossible to pull off.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, how did he even begin to execute this plan?
So Smalls had to time everything perfectly.
Okay.
He waited for the cover of darkness and fog
Mm-hmm.
to slip past Fort Sumter,
Oh, wow.
the very place where the Civil War began.
Fort Sumter.
Yes.
Yeah, it must have been a heart-stopping
Oh,
moment.
yeah. Can't imagine.
Sailing right past the place where it all started.
Right.
What did they do to avoid being fired upon?
So to signal their surrender to the Union forces,
Yeah.
they did something incredibly daring, yet simple.
Okay.
They raised a white bedsheet as a flag.
A white bedsheet.
No white bedsheet?
Talk about an ingenious and powerful symbol of hope.
Ab-
And this escape wasn't just about personal freedom for Smalls and the others on board, right?
No, you're right.
Oh, what happened to the Planter itself?
The impact of Small's escape goes far beyond one man's story.
Okay.
He delivered a valuable Confederate steamship and cannons
Wow.
directly into Union hands.
So how did this daring act affect the bigger picture of the Civil War and the period of Reconstruction that followed?
It became an enormous symbol of resistance
Yeah.
for enslaved people throughout the South. This act of defiance, achieving what seemed impossible,
Right.
ignited hope where many had felt only despair. But to fully understand its significance,
Okay.
we need to examine the political landscape of the time.
What was happening politically that
Sure.
made this escape so impactful?
Well, President Andrew Johnson's approach to Reconstruction was fairly lenient on the South,
Right.
and it was failing miserably.
Okay.
This failure led to the rise of what we call radical Reconstruction in 1867.
Radical Reconstruction. That sounds like a significant shift. What
It-
made it so different?
Think of it as a forceful reset for the South.
Okay.
The Reconstruction Acts
Yeah.
divided the former Confederate states into military districts, mandated new state constitutions,
Right.
and crucially guaranteed black male suffrage.
Suffrage.
Suffrage meaning the right to vote.
Right, of course.
Yes.
And this leads us to a landmark event,
Yes.
the South Carolina Constitutional Convention of 1868.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
This was the first time a black majority convention was elected in U.S. history.
Wow.
Imagine the atmosphere.
Yeah.
A blend of hope, anxiety, and the weight of history on everyone's shoulders.
I can only imagine.
Right.
Were there any figures who really stood out during this convention?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Robert Smalls, our daring escape artist,
Yeah.
became a key player
Yeah.
advocating strongly for public education for all children, regardless of race.
That's great.
Another notable figure was Richard Kane, a
Mhm.
skilled orator and minister. His speeches were so powerful
Yeah.
that they impressed even his critics.
So they drafted a new constitution during this convention.
They did.
What did it look like?
It was incredibly progressive for its time,
Okay.
guaranteeing civil rights regardless of race.
Wow.
This was a massive shift,
Yeah.
a step towards equality
Right.
that frightened those clinging to the old ways.
And as we know, progress often triggers a backlash.
Unfortunately, yes.
This is where the Ku Klux Klan enters the picture, right?
Unfortunately, you're right.
Yeah.
This period of hope and change was met with fierce resistance.
Mm.
The KKK,
Yeah.
born out of fear and a desire to maintain white supremacy,
Right.
began its rise to prominence.
Their story is a chilling one.
It is.
How did they transform from a social club into a violent white supremacist organization so quickly?
Well, the KKK's evolution was fueled by anxieties among those who felt their power and way of life slipping away.
Right.
They targeted anyone
Yeah.
who challenged their vision of the South, particularly black people who dared to rise above what they considered their proper place.
It wasn't just abstract hatred, was it?
No.
The KKK committed real acts of violence against real people.
Tragically, yes.
Yeah.
And we have firsthand accounts that paint a heartbreaking picture of the terror they inflicted.
Right.
For instance, there's the story of Abram Colby, a black legislator in Georgia.
A black legislator?
Yes.
That must have made him a prime target.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Colby was dragged from his home
Oh,
and whipped for hours.
That's terrible.
The Klan threatened him
Yeah.
simply for daring to vote Republican.
Wow.
And then there's Maria Carter, a
Yeah.
young mother who witnessed the brutal beating of her husband and uncle by Klansmen.
It's hard to fathom the depths of such hatred and brutality.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But amidst this darkness, we see the rise of black representation in Congress.
Yes.
In 1870, a landmark moment occurs.
Yes. That's the year Hiram Revels becomes the first black U.S. senator.
Wow.
It was a truly watershed moment.
Yeah.
A testament to the resilience of black Americans and their unwavering determination to have their voices heard on the national stage.
Revels wasn't alone in this fight, was he?
Not at all.
Okay.
He was joined by other remarkable individuals like Joseph Rainey, the first black congressman in the House of Representatives.
Okay.
There was also Richard Kane, who somehow managed to balance his role as a minister with his passionate political activism.
Right.
And we can't forget Robert Brown Elliott, known for his sharp intellect and powerful speeches.
And a bit later, Blanche K. Bruce, right?
That's right.
Okay.
He would go on to become the first black senator elected to a full term.
Wow.
These men came from diverse backgrounds,
Right.
but they were united by a common purpose.
What was it that bound them together?
A shared commitment to uplift their communities,
Mhm.
fight for equality,
Yeah.
and prove to the nation that black men were not only capable,
Right.
but deserving of a place in American government. They were exceptional individuals who overcame immense challenges to represent their people.
So these black congressmen are now in the halls of power,
Right.
facing a system that had long excluded them.
Exactly.
What kind of immediate challenges did they encounter?
One of the most pressing issues was safeguarding black voting rights.
Okay.
Remember, the KKK was gaining strength,
Yeah.
using violence and intimidation to suppress black voters
Right.
and maintain white supremacy.
Of course.
It was a direct assault on the progress achieved during Reconstruction.
How did Congress respond to this growing threat?
They enacted a series of laws
Right.
known as the Enforcement Acts, beginning in 1870.
Okay.
These acts represented a significant step toward federal protection of individual rights.
That big.
They made interfering with anyone's right to vote a federal crime
Wow.
and empowered the government to oversee elections,
So,
especially in areas where voter intimidation was rampant.
expanding federal power like that must have been controversial,
You're absolutely right.
especially in the South.
There was considerable pushback
Yeah.
from those who saw it as federal overreach.
Right.
However, the Republicans in Congress,
Hmm.
many of whom were staunch abolitionists,
Right.
argued that the federal government had a moral obligation to protect its citizens,
Right.
particularly those most vulnerable.
And within this fight for voting rights, we have the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871.
Yes.
What made this particular act so significant?
This was a major turning point.
Okay.
It granted President Grant the authority to deploy federal troops to combat the Klan and protect black citizens.
That's huge.
Imagine that
Yeah.
federal troops intervening to uphold civil rights.
Yeah.
It sent a powerful message
Right.
and did for a time help to curb KKK violence.
So we're witnessing these black congressmen and their allies battling fiercely for equality and justice.
Yes.
But I imagine there were setbacks along the way as well.
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
And some were truly devastating.
Yeah.
One of the most tragic involved the Freedmen's Savings and Trust Company.
Okay.
It was a bank established to help formerly enslaved people achieve financial security.
It sounds like a beacon of hope.
It was.
A chance for financial independence after generations of being denied economic opportunity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What went wrong?
Tragically, the bank was poorly managed,
Okay.
and when the Panic of 1873 struck,
Yeah.
it went bankrupt.
Oh, no.
Thousands of depositors,
Wow.
many of whom had entrusted their life savings to this institution,
Right.
lost everything.
That's heartbreaking.
It was a terrible tragedy.
How did Black congressmen react to this crisis?
They fought tirelessly for their constituents.
Okay.
Blanche K. Bruce and Joseph Rainey delivered impassioned pleas to Congress,
Yeah.
demanding some form of compensation for those who had lost their savings.
Right.
They argued that this wasn't just about money.
Yeah.
It was about the shattered trust and broken dreams of thousands of Black Americans who were finally starting to build a new life for themselves. It must have been a devastating blow to a community already grappling with so much adversity.
It was.
Did Congress take any action to help those who had lost their money?
Sadly, their efforts were largely futile.
Oh, wow.
While Congress did approve some minimal payments,
Okay.
it was a mere drop in the bucket compared to the vast scale of losses.
Right.
It served as a painful reminder that even amidst the advancements of Reconstruction, Black Americans continued to face systemic barriers and vulnerabilities.
Despite these setbacks, these Black congressmen persevered, championing the rights of their communities.
It did.
What other crucial legislative battles did they engage in?
One of the most significant was the fight for a comprehensive civil rights bill
Okay.
that would genuinely guarantee equal treatment under the law.
Right.
This battle culminated in 1875
Yeah.
with a bill aimed at outlawing racial segregation in public spaces,
Wow.
schools, transportation, and juries.
That's ambitious.
It was a bold vision for a more just and equitable society.
I imagine the debate surrounding such a bill was incredibly contentious.
Oh, absolutely.
Do we have any insights into those discussions?
We do. And it's
That's great.
fascinating to examine how those arguments played out. For instance, we have records of Alexander Stephens,
Right.
the former vice president of the Confederacy,
Wow.
speaking out vehemently against the bill.
Alexander Stephens.
Yes.
The man who helped lead the Confederacy.
The very same.
Wow.
He argued that Black and white people preferred to be separated,
Okay.
and that the bill was an example of federal overreach, interfering with the natural order of things.
It's chilling to hear those old arguments resurface.
It is.
Those attempts to justify inequality by labeling it natural or preferable.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that the fight for civil rights is an ongoing struggle,
Absolutely.
transcending any particular era.
You're right.
Yeah.
Those same arguments, albeit in different forms,
Oh, yeah.
are sadly still being made today.
But during that debate in 1875,
Yes.
Robert Brown Elliott, the brilliant orator from South Carolina,
Yes.
rose to deliver a blistering rebuttal to Stephens.
He did.
He eloquently argued that Black Americans were entitled to the same rights and protections as any other citizen,
That's right.
and that the government had a duty to ensure those rights were upheld.
Absolutely.
What a powerful moment.
It was.
Must have been something to witness those two men with such vastly different backgrounds and ideologies clashing on the floor of Congress.
I can only imagine.
Elliott's speech is remembered for its eloquence and passion.
It is.
What were some of the key points he raised?
Eliot masterfully dismantled Stephens' arguments point by point.
Okay.
He reminded the chamber that the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were specifically designed to guarantee equality for Black Americans, not to perpetuate their subjugation.
Right.
He pointed out the hypocrisy of Stephens, who had fought to destroy the Union,
Right.
now lecturing Congress on states' rights.
Wow.
It was a powerful condemnation of the former Confederate leader and a stirring defense of Black citizenship.
So we have Robert Brown Elliott,
Right.
this relatively young Black congressman,
Yeah.
challenging a figure like Alexander Stephens, someone who had literally helped lead the Confederacy.
It's credible, isn't it?
It speaks volumes about the courage and determination of these Black legislators to stand up for their principles
Excellent.
and fight for equality.
Yeah, their unwavering commitment.
And ultimately, their efforts, along with those of their allies, paid off.
They did.
The Civil Rights Act of 1875 was passed,
Right.
marking a significant, though sadly short-lived victory
Yes.
for racial equality.
It was a step forward, but
You mentioned it was short-lived.
yeah.
Why was this victory not more lasting?
Well,
What's happened?
the decline of Reconstruction and the erosion of these advancements can be attributed to several factors.
Oh,
Enforcement of progressive laws like the Civil Rights Act of 1875 was weak
Right.
and often faced resistance,
Yeah.
particularly in the South.
So laws were in place. But they weren't being effectively implemented.
Exactly.
What about the federal government?
Well,
Weren't they supposed to be protecting these newly won rights?
they were.
Yeah.
But the political will to enforce those rights started to dwindle.
Okay.
Remember, this was a period of immense social and political upheaval.
Yeah.
There's a growing sense of fatigue
Mm.
with the ongoing conflicts.
Right.
And a desire, especially in the North,
Yeah.
to move on from the legacy of the Civil War.
So it was a sort of collective desire
Yeah, you could say that.
to turn the page, even if it meant leaving some unfinished business behind.
In a way, yes.
Oh, okay.
And the economic panic of 1873 further exacerbated the situation.
Right.
It shifted the nation's focus toward economic recovery
Yeah.
and away from the social and political reforms of Reconstruction.
So you have this convergence of factors,
Yeah.
weak enforcement,
Right.
waning political will,
Mm-hmm.
economic instability.
Exactly.
It sounds like the perfect storm for backsliding. And Southern Democrats, who had never truly accepted the changes brought about by Reconstruction, saw an opportunity to regain power.
They did.
They began to systematically dismantle those gains,
Right.
passing laws that disenfranchised black voters
Mm-hmm.
and eroded civil rights.
It was dark period.
It's tragic to see those hard-won victories being undone.
It is.
What became of those black congressmen who had fought so valiantly for those changes?
As Reconstruction faded,
Yeah.
so too did black representation in Congress.
Right.
Many of those who had held office were pushed out
Wow.
by a resurgence of white supremacy
Yeah.
and a wave of voter suppression tactics.
Their voices silenced, just as they were beginning to make real headway.
It's a heartbreaking chapter in American history.
It is.
It's a reminder that progress is rarely linear
Yeah.
and that the pursuit of justice demands constant vigilance.
Mm.
It also highlights the resilience and determination of those black legislators
Right.
who, even in the face of defeat, laid the groundwork for future generations to carry on the fight for equality.
So what can we learn from the story of Robert Smalls and the rise and fall of black political power during Reconstruction? What does it all mean for us today?
What's fascinating here is that it reveals the complexities of history,
Okay.
the interplay of hope and resistance, progress and setbacks.
Yeah.
It reminds us that freedom is not a destination, but a journey,
Right.
and that the fight for equality is an ongoing struggle.
It also underscores the power of individual courage,
Absolutely.
like that of Robert Smalls, to ignite change.
Mhm.
It's a story that speaks to the enduring human spirit,
It does.
the unwavering pursuit of liberty against overwhelming odds.
And it raises an important question for all of us.
Yeah.
What parallels can we draw to the challenges we face today?
Right.
How can we learn from both the successes and failures of Reconstruction to ensure that the fight for justice continues?
That's something worth thinking about. It's something to ponder as we reflect on this remarkable period in American history.
I agree.
If this deep dive has piqued your interest,
Yeah,
be sure to subscribe for more explorations of history's hidden depths.
that's right.
We'll continue to unearth those untold stories,
Easily.
the ones that challenge our assumptions
Yeah.
and inspire us to create a more just and equitable world.
I think that's a great goal.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep striving for what's right.